lot, ladies and gentlemen, is something brewing. That's what we've got to keep close tabs on. That's all we have time for in this edition of The Right Stand. Stay with us. Brass Tacks follows.
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. Air India, the Maharaja of the Indian skies, has placed an order of royal proportions with plane manufacturers Airbus and Boeing. It plans to buy 470 aircraft, 250 of them from Airbus and 220 of them from Boeing over the next 5 years. This is the biggest deal in aviation history. It's a signal, not just to the United States, Britain and France, the countries that are manufacturing these planes, that India is firmly with its Western partners. It also sends a signal to China that India is willing to compete with the Dragon for a greater share of the global aviation marketplace. Alright, so Air India has signed this Maharaja of a deal to buy 470 aircraft from Boeing and Airbus. Let's break down the fine print of this deal. So what is it that Air India is buying from Airbus? 250 aircraft in all from Airbus. A bulk of this is the medium-haul A320neo. So 140 A320neos is what Air India will be getting from Airbus. In addition to that, there'll also be the medium-haul A321neo, 70 of them. So that accounts for more than 200 out of the 250. These are single-aisle planes, these are medium-haul planes. Then you have the wide-bodied, long-haul planes, A350-1000s, there's going to be 34 of them, and another 6 A350-900. So 40 wide-bodied, long-haul flights, hoping that Air India can fly direct to the United States and to Australia and other far-flung places. From Boeing, it's 220 aircraft. Again, a bulk of them will be the medium-range flights, B737 MAX. 190 out of the 220 will be the B737. There will be the Dreamliners, the 787S, 20 Boeing 787 Dreamliners, 10 Boeing 777XS. Remember, these are wide-bodied, long-haul aircraft as well. And there is an option for an additional 50 737 MAXs and 20 787S Dreamliners that can be expanded with Boeing. Now, the sheer size of this new order indicates Air India's desire to reclaim its place not just in the Indian skies, but also in the global aviation market. So let's see how this deal stacks up against other mammoth deals that we have seen in the past. Air India's deal to buy 470 Boeing and Airbus jets is $80 billion, but there is an option to increase that to buy an additional 70 Boeing planes. If that were to happen over the next 5 years, this deal would be upwards of $100 billion, making it the largest in aviation history. The closest that we saw was what happened with Emirates. This was in 2013. It bought 150 Boeing 777s and 50 Airbus A380s. That deal was worth $100 billion. In 2017, you had Indigo Airlines ordering 430 Airbus A320neos. That was about just a shade under $50 billion. And if you go back all the way to 2011, American Airlines bought 260 Airbus and 200 Boeing planes for just a shade under $40 billion. This was more than 10 years ago. The size of the deal aside, it is also a game changer on multiple fronts. It is more than just a commercial deal, it's a strategic one, and here's why. It signals India's rise as a global power and will further cater to the country's expansive domestic flyer base as well as the vast diaspora that are traveling internationally. It cements India's growing influence on the world map. It will help strengthen its ties with the US, UK and France. It could also lead to some industrial spin-offs. India is the world's fastest growing aviation market, and this deal will help India get a much bigger footprint in the aviation skies. Air India's dream of dominating the global skies has also well and truly taken off with this deal. It can in fact help modernize the fleet of the former national air carrier. Now, it will also help counter the kind of dominance that we have seen of the Middle Eastern carriers, whether it's Emirates, Etihad, or even Qatar Airways. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking at that video conference, which was also attended by the French President Emmanuel Macron, as well as leaders of Tata Sons and the Airbus company, he hailed this historic deal and said that India will soon become the third biggest aviation market in the world.
निकट भविष्य में भारत एविएशन सेक्टर में विश्व का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा मार्केट बनने जा रहा है। कई आकलनों के अनुसार भारत को अगले 15 वर्षों में 2000 से अधिक विमानों की आवश्यकता होगी। आज की ऐतिहासिक घोषणा इस बढ़ती मांग को पूरा करने में सहायक होगी। भारत की मेक इन इंडिया, मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड विजन के तहत एरोस्पेस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में अनेक नए अवसर खुल रहे हैं।
So US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak have all hailed the Air India deal, and with good reason, because it vastly benefits all three countries. Let's break that down for you. For the United States, this deal will create 1 million jobs in 44 out of the 50 states. For France, the Air India deal will also create new employment opportunities. And in the UK, where a bulk of these engines and other spare parts will be manufactured, it's going to create highly skilled jobs in Wales and Derbyshire. Remember, this is where the Rolls-Royce factories are, and the Rolls-Royce will be manufacturing a bulk of these engines for these aircraft. It will also help the United States deepen its ties with the lucrative Indian market. France has already signaled at developing new areas of dedication with India. And in Wales, in the UK, 450 manufacturing jobs and £100 million of investment will be brought in. For the United States, the deal will help boost the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership. French aerospace manufacturer of the engine, Safran, will be setting up a facility here in India to service these jet engines. And a big portion of manufacturing of new aircraft will take place in the UK. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron said the deal shows that Airbus and all its French partners are fully dedicated to developing new areas of cooperation with India.
The first one is that Airbus is contributing to the outstanding development of India. And the new 250 aircrafts, which will be delivered to Air India, will be one more step in this direction. There is a deep commitment in France to provide the state-of-the-art, the most efficient technologies available to India, and to be part of your Made in India strategy. French government has put all my energy for the last 6 years to reinvigorate French industry. And beyond aviation, we are building a new ambition in the sectors of nuclear energy, microchips, space, cyber, biotech, to mention a few of them.
So it's not just a commercial deal. There's a great deal of geopolitics that's also played a role in this mega airline deal. Biden, Macron, and Sunak all hailed the economic impact of this Indian order, which can make and affirmed how the Indian economy is front and center in helping drive their respective economies as well. The governments of the US, UK, and France have realized that India is the fastest emerging new growth center, perhaps the only one in size and scale that can rival China. Just like in the Indo-Pacific, India is now gearing up to compete with China up in the skies. Boeing is estimating that the Indian commercial fleet could nearly quadruple by 2041. The COVID-19 pandemic took a big toll on China's passenger traffic, and now Western countries are backing India to overtake China as the world's biggest aviation market. So, how do these two countries, India and China, stack up in the global aviation space? China has more than 200 commercial airports, whereas in India, currently, it stands at 150, with a plan of increasing that to over 200. In 2019, before the pandemic struck, domestic passenger traffic in China was 600 million, whereas in India, it was about a third of that at 250 million. That same year, international passenger traffic in China was 150 million, whereas for India, it was only 70 million. But then the pandemic happened, and that completely changed the dynamics of passenger traffic. In India, the number of passengers has pretty much come back to pre-pandemic levels, but China, despite the little bump that we saw during the Spring Festival holiday a few weeks ago, it is nowhere close to the 2019 air passenger traffic numbers. Now, one of the biggest hits, it's not just China, there is other geopolitics at play here as well, because one of the biggest hits because of this deal is going to be the Middle Eastern airlines. Emirates, the national carrier of the UAE, carried a little over 2 million passengers from India to Europe and North America between April 2019 and March 2020. That's when the pandemic hit. That represented almost 20% market share for this route. So 1 in 5 Indians who were flying out of the country to go to Europe or to America were going through Emirates. Etihad Airways from Abu Dhabi, they carried about 700,000 passengers from India to Europe and North America in that same time period. That accounts for 6% market share for that route. And Qatar Airways, based in Doha, they flew a little over 1.1 lakh passengers from India to Europe and North America in that same time period between April 2019 and March 2020, just before the pandemic hit. This represented a 9% market share for the route. So basically, if you take the 3 Middle Eastern airlines altogether, Emirates, Etihad and Qatar, they accounted for more than a third, which means 3 out of 10 passengers, Indian passengers who were flying out of India to go to either the United States or Canada or any country in Europe were flying a Middle Eastern airline. That Air India is hoping will change with this deal. Now, to talk about both the commercial as well as the geopolitical significance of this deal, Mukesh Aghi is the chief, the CEO and the founder of the India-US Strategic Partnership Forum. Thank you very much, Dr. Aghi, for speaking with us. First things first, I mean, the numbers are mind-boggling. The biggest deal in aviation history, 470 aircraft, above $80 billion, commercial estimates. But what do you make of the strategic nature of this deal? Going beyond the big headline numbers, as it were, the fact that a private Indian airline is front and center of this deal, it's almost evenly split between an American manufacturing company in Boeing and a European airline manufacturer in Airbus. What is the strategic import, according to you, of this deal?
Well, I think when you look at the size of the deal, both in dollar terms and in volume of planes, it sends a very significant message around the world. One is geopolitical. That means India, US are much more aligned strategically. But more important is it brings manufacturing back to the US. It also gives opportunity for India to start looking at manufacturing GE engines in India itself, because the Boeing planes are powered by GE engines. More important is also economic. It drives the trade, the vision, which then Vice President Biden, now President, had painted at one of our events, saying that he likes to see India-US trade going to $500 billion. Correct. So I think that's moving in the right trajectory. And I would say that it also sends a message that the economic growth story of India is in the right direction, is true. The potential are great. That India will become a $5 trillion economy, and then eventually $10 trillion economy. And finally, I would say that it shows the confidence of Indian corporates, that they're willing to bet long-term on the economy and also the sector itself. It is one of the fastest growing sector in the world, almost 20% annually. Yeah. So it has a strong implications geopolitically, economically, and also domestic growth story.
And what, according to you, Dr. Aghi, what's the message that this deal sends out to the Chinese? Before the pandemic hit, and I put out those numbers, China was the largest aviation market in the world. It had 600 million plus flyers domestically, as well as over 150 million internationally. India had about a third of that, 250 million domestic and about 75 million international. But the pandemic has changed all of that. I mean, we're seeing Indian air passenger traffic numbers come back to almost 2019 levels, whereas China is still struggling. What signal does this deal send to the Chinese?
Well, very simple, and that is India growth story continues. The travel segment, even though China has almost 5,000 plus civil aircrafts, India has close to 700. This will take us in the right direction. But more important is that the domestic tourism is as critical as international tourism. Indian common man can now get on a plane at affordable prices, and this deal will basically create that ambiance and environment for the citizens. The message it sends to China is India's momentum continues, and I think it's important that both countries are looking at eye to eye rather than confronting from eye to eye itself.
Yeah, and I'm also amazed at the fact that this deal was almost evenly split between an American aircraft manufacturer in Boeing and the European aircraft manufacturer in Airbus, 220 to 250. So what kind of signal does this send to India's American and European partners, particularly in the context, and the reason I'm asking this is because after the Russia-Ukraine war, the feeling in Washington and perhaps even in London and Paris was that India is not necessarily on the same page when it comes to sanctions on Russia. India has not voted against Russia in any of the votes that have happened either at the UNGA or at the UNSC. Does this deal once again reinforce the message that India is very firmly in the US and European camp when it comes to such big-ticket business deals?
No, I think it sends a message that India will maintain its strategic autonomy. India will play where it serves its national interest. India will cooperate where it serves geopolitical interest. And so what we are seeing is a India which is rising, taking independent decision without worrying about what the Americans think or the European thinks. And I think here India has hedged its bet between America and Europe on civilian aircraft. So I think it's important to understand this is not just an economic deal, it's a message from India that it will maintain its independence. Yes, it will do business with Europe, it will do business with America, but please watch out that what serves India will take that decision on its own.
All right, one final word, whether it's Joe Biden in the United States, whether it's Rishi Sunak in the UK, how is this going to help them sell the deal domestically? Biden tweeted saying this will create some 1 million jobs across 44 out of the 50 states in the United States, especially when he's going up in the election season. There's 2024 big elections coming up in America. How may this play out domestically, you reckon?
Well, I think it sells very well. Biden's agenda was bring back manufacturing. And this will create over 1 million jobs in 44 different states. And he said that this is a blue-collar job creation.
Yeah.
But he mentioned in his message that you don't have to be a college educated to work on this project itself. It's the same thing with Rishi Sunak, in the sense is, while job creation is a big challenge, this will create tremendous amount of jobs in the Rolls-Royce factories in UK itself. So it is a win-win all three ways for President Biden, from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and also for Prime Minister Modi itself.
All right. As always, Mukesh Aghi, it's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us and putting that deal into perspective and context for our viewers, and how it's not just about the big bucks or purely commercial terms. It has to be seen in geostrategic terms as well. Let's move on here on the program. The entire national capital, in fact, the entire country, was shocked in utter disbelief when the Shraddha Walkar murder case came to light a few weeks ago. Now, there is another such case. This time it is young Nikki Yadav, who was murdered brutally at the hands of her boyfriend, Sahil. Her body was stored inside a freezer, and the same day, Sahil went on to marry another girl. Now, the question that needs to be asked, whether it was in the Aftab case or now in the Sahil case, is what is this depraved mentality? What kind of depraved man can end up doing something like this? What is this mindset? Is it faulty upbringing? Is it the fact that none of the people around them, their friends or family, are able to detect this kind of psychotic behavior? Or is it simply the absolute lack of fear of law?
पाँच दिन की रिमांड ले ली है यही सारी चीज़ें करने के लिए, सीक्वेंस को एस्टेब्लिश करने के लिए, साक्ष्यों को और मजबूत करने के लिए।
So here's the sequence of events. Sahil and Nikki, they met and started dating back in 2018. Soon after, they started living together. This was in a rented accommodation in Greater Noida in the outskirts of the national capital. During the 2020 lockdown, they both returned to their respective homes, and once the lockdown was lifted, they started living together again, this time in a rented house in the western part of the national capital in a place called Dwarka. Sahil did not inform his family that he was in a relationship, while they were urging him to get married all this while. So in December of last year, his wedding was fixed with another woman. The wedding date was the 10th of February. All this while, Nikki was clueless. She was completely in the dark about Sahil's wedding plans. And then on the 9th of February, after Sahil got engaged to this other woman, Nikki got wind of Sahil's quote-unquote double life. So the couple set out in Sahil's cousin's car. This was around 11 p.m. on the night between 9th and 10th of February. They drove to Kashmiri Gate, which is in the central part of Delhi. It's a very busy metro station as well. Nikki there confronted Sahil about his wedding plans with this other woman. The couple then had a heated argument, and all of this is happening inside Sahil's cousin's car. Sahil then, in a fit of rage, ended up allegedly strangling Nikki with the data cable of his phone, which was lying around in his car. After killing Nikki, Sahil then panicked. He drove around with Nikki's dead body, still strapped in with a seatbelt. He drove around with that dead body in his cousin's car for 40 kilometers. Basically, from the central part of Delhi, he drove all the way, crossing states into Haryana. At about 4 in the morning, he went to a dhaba in Najafgarh, which is right on the outskirts between Delhi and Haryana. Apparently, this is a dhaba that's owned by his family. The dhaba was closed on account of his impending wedding. Sahil then stuffed Nikki's body inside a freezer in the dhaba, and then he left. And here's the more macabre part. After leaving that, after having committed this heinous crime, after storing his girlfriend's body in a freezer, he goes home, gets ready, and gets married a few hours later. Now, before she was strangled by her boyfriend with a charging cable and stuffed inside a fridge, Nikki was last seen alive on the 9th of February. Now, this is CCTV footage that's been acquired from the building where she lived. It was taken just hours before her murder. Nikki is seen entering that building and climbing the steps to her apartment. Now, it's important. It's important to note that she was alone at this time. Sahil was not seen anywhere in the CCTV footage. You can see her entering the building and then walking up the stairs into her apartment. Nikki's family was not aware of her live-in relationship with Sahil, and they got to know about her murder when the Delhi police actually contacted them. Now, this is the vehicle in which Nikki was killed. Police have seized the car. It was supposed to be Sahil's cousin's car. He strangled her with a data cable. He kept driving the car. Like I said, he drove for another 40 kilometers. Right next to him was this dead body, seatbelt intact. After driving for around 40 kilometers and ending up in another place, almost at the border with another state, Sahil ended up at this dhaba that was owned by his family. After reaching this dhaba in Najafgarh, Sahil then unloaded Nikki's body and kept it inside the refrigerator. He then drove to his house, which is again 40 kilometers back towards Delhi, and then within the next few hours got married to another woman, almost as if nothing ever happened. The police finally tracked him down. Sahil told them that the dhaba was shut because of his wedding and that the fridge was not working. He then led the police to the body. CNN News 18 has also accessed the very first pictures of Sahil getting married just hours after murdering his girlfriend, who he was in a relationship with for 5 years. For 5 years, he was seeing this girl, living in with her, wanted to break up. That's fine, that's natural. Couples break up all the time. But it is absolutely befuddling that no one in his family or their friends or in Nikki's family for that matter suspected anything. Now, this new bride, we're given to understand, and our heart goes out to her because she has to live through this nightmare. She's now gone back to her family home.
Shocking details coming out from the Delhi police sources at this point in time. So yes, this incident happened on the intervening night of 9th and 10th February. Remember, on the 9th of February was the engagement of Sahil Gehlot, and on the 10th of February was the marriage of Sahil Gehlot. So yes, on the 9th of February, on the intervening 9th and 10th February, he strangles his live-in girlfriend who they were living in for almost 4 to 5 years now. They initially met in the year 2018, and since then they have been living together. So this incident happened on the intervening night of 9th and 10th February at Kashmiri Gate, where Sahil strangled Nikki Yadav to death with a phone charger that was present in his vehicle itself. And after that, from Kashmiri Gate, he comes down to this place at which I am standing right now. I'm standing at Mitraon village, at the very dhaba in which it has been alleged the body of Nikki Yadav was found out here. So yes, Sahil drove all the way from Kashmiri Gate to this dhaba out here in Mitraon village in Najafgarh. That is approximately a distance of 40 kilometers. And in the meanwhile, he kept the body of Nikki Yadav in the front seat itself, and he went around driving fearlessly. And in that duration of 40 kilometers, no one actually raised any suspicion that a dead body was lying in the front seat of that vehicle. And once reaching out here in his dhaba, he went ahead and kept that body, in fact concealed that body in a fridge at his dhaba.
Meanwhile, Nikki Yadav's last rites took place in Jhajjar in Haryana this evening. She had visited home around a month ago. She had kept in touch with her parents and siblings and reportedly called them every single day. Therefore, when she did not call for a couple of days, first on Saturday and then the following day, the family kind of got worried. Nikki's father got in touch with one of her friends, who then informed him that she was not at this rented flat and that she was last seen with Sahil. Nikki's father then got in touch with Sahil, but was reportedly misled every single time he confronted Sahil about where his daughter was.
In the interrogation that has happened, what are the details that he has revealed till now, and whatever he has said, are those details being corroborated with evidences, and is his statement coming out to be true?
We have taken 5 days to verify his statement. We have sent multiple teams to check CCTV footage of the route. We have been collecting all kinds of evidence, technical evidence, biological DNA evidence, and physical evidence. Most of it has been corroborated. So far in the investigation, I can say that the girl was upset with the information that he is getting married the next day. They had a heated argument in the car, and he strangulated her with the data cable of his mobile phone. This has come on record so far. These are the facts as of now.
Meanwhile, CNN News 18's Anshul Singh also confronted Sahil as he was being sent to police remand for 5 days.
Accused Sahil has just reached the crime branch office. If you see Sahil, who is the main culprit in this entire case, and he is accused of in the manner in which he went ahead and killed Nikki. I'll just try and get a number. Sahil, आपको शर्म आ रही है? आपने जिस तरह का जिसका
And of course, this is not the first time that such depravity has come to light. Just earlier this month, there was another case. This was a 27-year-old man who killed his live-in partner and stuffed her body into a mattress. In October of last year, there was a woman who was raped, killed, and her body was stuffed inside a suitcase, again in the National Capital Region, this time in Gurgaon. In December of last year, a man from Jharkhand killed his wife, chopped her body into 18 pieces, and then threw the body parts into different locations in and around where they used to live. And of course, the most blood-curdling of them all was the Aftab Shraddha case. Aftab Poonawalla strangling his live-in partner Shraddha Walkar, chopping her body into 35 pieces and then scattering them in a forest not very far from where they used to live. So what exactly is going on here? What explains this kind of depravity? Joining me now is someone who has seen policing in the national capital from very close quarters, former Delhi Police Commissioner, IPS officer and former Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry, Dr. Kiran Bedi is now joining me. Thank you very much, Dr. Bedi, for speaking with us. We've had these two extreme cases of depravity, almost animal-like behavior. It was Aftab a few weeks ago, and today it is Sahil. What is going on here? Help us understand. I mean, what causes this kind of absolutely debased behavior? Is it lack of fear of law, or is it that some people just happen to have a very devious mind?
I think it's exceedingly irresponsible, unconscientious parenting. The way we are producing our children, the way we are grooming our boys and girls both, the way we are educating them, we are more degree-oriented rather than value-based. So the values are minus in our education. There's no humanity. There's no human being. It's only learning a skill, not living a life. So I think that's where we're going wrong. It's the home. I would put the blame first on the homes, the parents, and then both education as well. How do we groom our children in the classrooms, boys and girls both? And girls emotionally very fragile, emotionally very fragile. And the boys, no respect for law. So I think we are going wrong in very heavily parenting, and parenting is not becoming an issue at all in our society. Parenting is all by accident. It's not by care, but accident.
I also want to talk a little bit about, the extreme nature of these cases. It does raise questions. I mean, here is a young man, Sahil, in his 20s. He is in a relationship with this girl for 5 years. For whatever reason, I mean, couples always break up, and that's okay. But he murders her. He gets rid of her body, hides it in a freezer. And I'm amazed. I mean, he's driving around 40 kilometers from central Delhi all the way to the border with Haryana. And nobody in the area, none of the neighbors, passers-by, and forget about them, even his friends or family seem to have a damn clue. I mean, what does that say about us, about society, about people around this young man?
Everybody is now in a rat race. We are all short of time. We are all very occupied and preoccupied with our own goings on. I don't think. So we got to, investigation will show whether it came to the notice of anybody or not. And did they ignore it? But I don't think if anybody had seen it and would ignore it. But I think it's more on impersonal lives now.
So tell me, I mean, this is clearly psychotic behavior, whether it was Sahil or Aftab before him. And these days, young people are living in, they're going on dating apps, they're going on blind dates. You can't stop that. And I don't think stopping that would be either practical or logical. But is there something that young people can look for in terms of telltale signs? If a person is behaving in a certain fashion, then your antennas need to go up. Something's wrong with him. Are there signs that can be picked up for this kind of psychotic behavior before it gets to such extreme cases where, people are killed and bodies are cut up?
I think defiant childhood, children defying parents now is the norm, almost becoming the norm. Having good children who are listening to their parents, loving, respecting, caring, and bonding, I think is one group. The other is no relationship. It's a user relationship. You give me this and I do this.
Correct.
Parents almost are afraid of adult children, girls and boys who threaten to leave homes if parents don't go by them. So I think parents are afraid, and parents then finally give up and they distance themselves because they see what can they feel helpless. I think a stage is coming where parents are becoming helpless of many of their teenaging children, boys and girls both.
So the fact that such violent crimes are happening against women, it's happening in the national capital, and it's happening repeatedly. I mean, I've just enlisted about 3 or 4 cases that have happened in the last 1 year. And this is the stuff that's, come out into the media. God knows how many such cases are there which have not been reported about. What does it say, according to you, Dr. Bedi, about the utter lack of fear of the law in the national capital?
I think society is accepting violence as a part of its life. We as in the society, we're ignoring violence. We're not talking the language of peace. Peace is not part of our growth. I think that's where we are suffering from. Violence is becoming the norm. Being unlawful is almost getting away, and you can get away, as they see. Punishment doesn't come too soon. Punishment is not exemplary. Punishment is also, there's no social taboo to these things. I think the social norms having changed, therefore the violence is becoming the norm. It's not a taboo. Being somebody violent, unlawful is not being looked down upon. Violence is being tolerated in a big way. So violence then enters homes as well.
One final word, and again, I know you've talked about this in the past as well, that there needs to be exemplary punishment. But, we've said this right from 2012 when Nirbhaya happened. It's been more than 10 years now. What do you think needs to be done so that at least this case or the Shraddha case or any of the cases that we've seen in the recent past become an example for potential such deviant behavior?
Zaka message now is becoming exemplary punishment within weeks. Within weeks. And such punishments should be nothing but death penalties or imprisonment for life, no remissions. No remissions after 14 years. Unless she see the threatening life inside a prison. And also within 2 months, maximum 2 weeks when the memory is fresh. I think that's very, very important that the person is hung while the crime memory is fresh.
Is still alive. All right. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Dr. Kiran Bedi, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll keep a close tab on how this case progresses and the Delhi Police's investigation into it. Meanwhile, let's shift focus from the north to the south, where in Tamil Nadu, a 28-year-old army jawan was allegedly beaten to death in the Krishnagiri district. The deceased is Prabhu. He served in Jammu and Kashmir. He got into a verbal spat with a group of people, one of whom happened to be a DMK councillor, Chinnaswamy. This was over washing clothes at a public tank. Later, that argument escalated into a full-blown attack, with more and more men joining this DMK councillor in thrashing Prabhu. A murder case has been registered against 9 men, including this DMK councillor who is currently absconding. 6 out of these 9 people have been arrested so far. But the councillor, the man who started this entire fight, he is still at large. So this entire incident happened on the 8th of February. Here's a breakdown of what exactly happened. This ward councillor, his name is Chinnaswamy, he got into a fight with Prabhu's brother Prabhakaran, who also happens to be serving in the Indian Army. When Prabhu tried to break both of them up, that's the councillor and his elder brother, the councillor and his goons started beating Prabhu instead. Prabhu was beaten with iron rods and sticks, after which he was rushed to a private hospital. He succumbed to his injuries 5 days later, and like I said, 6 out of these 9 accused have been arrested, but the main accused, the DMK councillor Chinnaswamy, is still absconding. CNN News 18's Purnima Murli spoke to the deceased army man's sister-in-law, his brother's wife. This is what she had to say.
என்ன மேடம் நடந்தது இந்த சம்பவம் எப்போ நடந்தது இது 8ஆம் தேதி மேம் ஒண்ணுமே இல்ல ஒரு சின்ன பிரச்சனை மேம் வேணும்னே முன்பக காரணமா ஆளுங்க எல்லாம் கூட்டி சேர்ந்து அடிச்சு கொண்டுட்டாங்க மேம் யாரு மேடம் எங்க வார்டு கவுன்சிலர் மேம் ஓகே அதுவும் மிலிட்டரிக்கு போய் என்னடா என்ன புடுங்க முடியும்னு சொல்லி அடிச்சாரு மேம் எப்படா நான் மிலிட்டரிக்கு போற பாக்குறேன்னு சொல்லி அடிச்சாரு மேம் அதே மாதிரி மிலிட்டரிக்கு போகாம பண்ணிட்டாங்க மேம் அப்புறம் ஹாஸ்பிட்டல் கூட்டின்னு போகும்போது ரொம்ப சீரியஸா அடிலாம் பட்டு. ஆமா மேம், அவருக்கு வெளியே அடி ஒண்ணு கூட இல்ல மேம், ஜஸ்ட் சின்னதா ஒரு பொட்டு சைஸ் தான் மேம் வெளியே அடி. ஃபுல்லா உள்ளடி மேம். இங்கேயே மயக்கம் போட்டு உயிரே போயிருச்சுன்னு தான் மேம் நினைச்சோம். அப்படி விழுந்தவனையும் அவங்க பையன் ராஜபாண்டி கழுத்து மேல எட்டி எட்டி வதிக்கிறான் மேம். சாவுடா சாவுடா சாவுடான்னு அடிக்கிறான் மேம். வேணும்னே மேம் முன்பகு ஏதோ காரணம் வச்சு கத்தி லாடு கட்டு அவங்க கைக்கு என்னென்ன கிடைக்குதோ எல்லாத்தையும் வச்சு எல்லாம் சேர்ந்து அடிச்சு கொண்டுட்டாங்க மேம். எங்க ஃபேமிலிக்கெல்லாம் எங்க மச்சினரு, எங்க வீட்டுக்காரு, எங்க மாமனார் 3 பேர் தான் மேம். 3 பேருமே சீரியஸா கண்டிஷன்ல தான் மேம் ஹாஸ்பிட்டல் அட்மிட் பண்ணோம். இப்போ மிலிட்டரிக்காரனுக்கே இந்த நிலைமைனா மற்றவங்களுக்கு இதோட இன்னும் எந்த நிலைமை மேம் வரும்? கேட்டான் வார்டு கவுன்சிலர் அவன் பையன் போலீஸ்ன்ற தைரியத்துல அடிச்சுட்டான் மேம். கண்டிப்பா இதுக்கு நியாயம் கிடைச்சா அவங்க மேம். ஒன்னும் ஒரு பாவம் அறியாத விடிஞ்சா மிலிட்டரிக்கு போகணும் மேம் அவன் டியூட்டிக்கு.
All right, this is an absolute shocker from Krishnagiri in Tamil Nadu. Let me go across to Madhuvanti Arun, who's a leader of the Tamil Nadu BJP, Suman C. Raman, political analyst, also joining us. I mean, it's utterly shocking. I'll start with Madhuvanti Arun because, you know, here is a jawan, somebody who's serving the nation, who is, bravely defending our country, and he's been beaten black and blue by this DMK councillor and his goons just over some petty argument. I mean, it was about, using water from a public tank. How does one even begin to explain this? And the fact that this man is still not under arrest, he's still on the run, I mean, that is telling.
Good evening, and good evening to my fellow panelists also here. The point being that this is not about a tiff over a water issue. The point here is, I don't know if you heard the family members speak right now. She clearly said that this was some preempted episode and this water issue was just something to trigger the whole incident. And she clearly stated how he was beaten to death and that it was all internal bleeding, and that even after he swooned and fell, the son of this councillor was kicking him in the neck saying, "Die. Let me see how you will go to the army. Let me see what you will pluck," literally in Tamil. That is exactly what she had spoken right now. And I want this to be recorded for national television because you really need to understand what has happened here. And this is despicable, disgraceful to say the least. And I do not understand where law and order is headed in Tamil Nadu, because this is not the first episode. Sometime back, we saw somebody being hacked to that outside a court premises in Coimbatore.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then we all are aware of the cylinder blasts that was spoken about as though it was some woman cooking in her kitchen, which then we realized that it was a terror attack that was avoided. So many things happening in Tamil Nadu, and I do not see any of the Tamil media even taking this up. I don't understand what this Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu is doing, because all this comes under his jurisdiction, I must say. It's his department. So I want to know, is this the Dravidian model that they are talking about?
Okay, so let me ask Suman C. Raman. The fact is that this is a grave criminal case. I mean, the fact that it can happen to an army man should be utterly eye-opening for all of us. And I'm sure, Sumant, you heard what the kin of the deceased person said, that here was a guy, I believe the son of this DMK councillor is with the police. He was beating to kill this army man. He was beating so that the army man dies. I mean, if this isn't utterly shocking, and if this doesn't move the needle on the law and order question, I don't know what will. The BJP is saying, Sumant, that this is indicative, this is illustrative of a larger breakdown of law and order in the state of Tamil Nadu.
Zaka, I think that such incidents are certainly becoming more and more frequent in Tamil Nadu. So that is a matter of grave concern. Look, the bigger issue for me is that the police still have not secured this man, this councillor.
Yeah.
And that is really a matter of concern. You will recall, Zaka, after the Coimbatore blast, for days together, the state government's version was it was a cylinder blast. And by the way, in the last 3-4 days, there have been more than 3 or 4 murders. There was a person who was beaten to death in Chennai today. I think that he was accused of being a thief or something by mistake, and he couldn't speak the local language, and he was beaten to death. So this, and of course, we know what happened in Coimbatore, where an under trial who was being brought to court was hacked to death by a rival gang, and this is not the first time that these kind of incidents are happening in the recent past. So I think that serious questions are being asked of the state government. There's also the issue of DMK party men sort of, using high-handed methods, and this is an extreme high-handed method, but there are consistent questions which are not being answered. And in fact, increasingly the question that is being asked in Tamil Nadu is how much control does Mr. Stalin really have over his party men? And, the general theory now is, to say sort of, Chief Minister is doing his bit, but nobody is listening to him. So
but
that
Suman,
is the kind
tell me something. I mean, whenever the DMK has been in power in the 90s, when Karunanidhi was Chief Minister, 2006, that this is always an accusation against the DMK government that law and order goes to the dogs. There are these DMK men who run amok, so on and so forth. But that does not necessarily always translate into electoral defeat or electoral costs, because law and order may not be the only issue that matters to the people. I mean, there could be a whole host of issues on which people vote.
No, Zaka, I agree with you on that. But in this particular case, particularly in the last 8 to 10 months, there have been a series of lockup deaths, which again do reflect extremely badly on the state police.
Correct.
So I think that there are serious issues. The Home Department is with the Chief Minister. So technically, each of these, whether it is a lockup death or whether it is these kind of law and order issues, they are all squarely at the Chief Minister's door, because he has chosen to keep that department with himself, which is the pattern which we have seen in Tamil Nadu, during the time of Kalainar or Jayalalitha, and all of them used to keep the Home Department with them. Now, the key challenge is, how will Mr. Stalin actually face up to these issues?
Okay.
We have seen in the past, high-handedness by ruling party men does not have the consequences that it should have. This emboldens more party men. And I think that is where Mr. Stalin seems to be losing the grip.
So let me ask Madhuvanti Arun, and I'll give her the final word. I mean, the point that Sumant is making, and I think there is some merit there as well. Yes, these are absolutely depraved crimes. Stuff like this should not happen, and there should be political accountability for it, and especially all the more so if the Chief Minister holds the home portfolio. But whether it wasn't that case that we saw a few weeks ago, where there were this DMK men who misbehaved with a woman police constable at a rally, or now this story, the sad reality, Madhuvanti Arun, is that, this will be there in the news cycle for 2 or 3 days, maybe a week at best, and then the media will move on. And the moment the media moves on, it seems like the people have also moved on.
No, I totally agree with you, Zaka, and that is my problem. That is my only problem. This is not something that the media should take up and give up after 2 days, but then you don't have a choice. You have other things to cover. But I want to know what the state police is doing. I want to know what the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu is doing. Is he in hibernation? What is going on? Like Sumansi Raman very rightly said, the Home Department comes directly under him. He chose to keep it that way. So what is he doing regarding this? Has he taken any action? And this is not the first time. It takes forever for the CM to wake up from his sleep, and then for everybody to come out and then say what is what, or then it takes somebody like our state president, Mr. Annamalai, to start a protest, start an agitation, and then things start moving. I mean, if this is going to be the case, then why does Mr. Stalin have to run the state? We'd rather just close down, have elections, and we'll decide who's going to be the Chief Minister next.
Okay.
I don't understand what is going on here, because nobody, not a single DMK person has come out and spoken. I don't see any action being taken. I don't know what the police is doing. And this is not the first time anybody from the DMK beautifully absconds.
Okay, Sumant, final word, 30 seconds. I got to wrap up. I got to wrap up on this. Yeah, Sumant.
There is no pressure on the DMK to speak up, simply because in local media, this story hardly exists, right? So this has not been picked up at all by the local media for very obvious reasons. So there is no pressure on the DMK to speak up, because the masses in Tamil Nadu are not necessarily watching national news channels.
Okay, no, I'll tell you this. I mean, sometimes we tend to sort of overinflate the thing about the national news channels. But fact is that in this day and age, when there is social media, there is a way that these stories sort of, really blow up. And in this case too, like in many other cases of stories, it first appears on social media, and then, the established media pick it up. But be that as it may, as I thank Sumansi Raman as well as Madhuvanti Arun, let's see if there is a political cost to pay, a political price to pay for this, simply because we know that the Erode by-election is coming up very soon. It's not very far away from Krishnagiri. It's a few hundred kilometers at best. So if this is such an important issue, an issue that is touching a raw nerve among a lot of people, then some of it might have a telling effect on the by-election itself. But we'll see how that story plays out. As we wrap up this edition of Brass Tacks, the death toll in the quake-hit countries of Turkey and Syria have now crossed 40,000. The World Health Organization has described the earthquake in Turkey as the worst natural disaster in a century. It characterizes this as the Europe region, both Turkey and Syria, southern Turkey. The United Nations has estimated that up to 5.3 million people in Syria may be rendered homeless after these earthquakes. Lakhs of people are in urgent need of food and shelter. Today, the NDRF provided relief material and aid to Aleppo in northern Syria. It included medication and aid received from international communities. And CNN News 18's Siddhant Mishra has travelled to some of the worst hit places in Turkey. Here's his ground report as we close out the show.
We are in Noor Dagi, one of the worst affected areas post the earthquake, and in fact behind me also there is this stretch which is completely devastated. And in fact this morning when I was passing through, I could see people pulling out their sofas. They were pulling out their basic amenities from this debris. It is a very dangerous structure, and in fact the army here is not allowing people to go inside because it's very dangerous. Even locals are also not going inside. But always efforts are being made to pick whatever little they can pick. What are the real problems and what help you need from country like India and other countries? What help we should send for you people?
Firstly, thanks for everything to come here and help for us. And our government mostly help about everything, about accommodation, food, and some clothes. We don't need any food, any clothes, but mostly problem in here, containers and about some home. It will be a very big challenge for us. Don't know. I'm not sure about this. I don't see tomorrow even what will happen. We will pray to God and we will start to I don't know.
Okay. So this is a situation of almost every house here in Noor Dagi where I'm reporting from, and in fact look at the devastation around me. I would ask my video journalist to pan and give sense to our viewers. So this is the level of devastation. In fact, now after almost a week's time, people are coming back and they are pulling out their stuff, the basic stuff which is lying here. And in fact, they are. This is the only hope left, and they really don't know. They don't have any clue. What are they going to do? How are they going to build the city? They say the only hope is God, and they don't have any idea. Whatever is possible, government is doing. All they require is toilets, heaters, and shelter homes, containers, so that they can protect themselves from cold.
Why the significance of this deal was important was not just as far as the revival of the aviation sector or specifically revival and expansion of Air India is concerned, but this has also gone through because of the deepening ties between both the leaders and the kind of trust that we have between India and United States. And I'm in fact just quoting from what US President Joe Biden said. He said that this purchase will support over 1 million American jobs across 44 states, and it will not even require a 4-year college degree. But as far as the ties between both the countries is concerned, this is again what US President Joe Biden said, and I'm quoting, he said, "This announcement also reflects the strength of the US-India economic partnership. Together with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, I look forward to deepening our partnership even further as we continue to confront shared global challenges, creating a more secure and prosperous future for all our citizens. So this is Amrit Kal, as we've been saying, and this is a new chapter because, if you go back to the 70s or even the 60s, it was almost unimaginable to see or even envision a deal like this. And today we're awaiting the order of almost 470 aircrafts, about 250 from Airbus and over 200 from Boeing. So it also speaks a lot as to where India's position as far as the global map is concerned, and how Prime Minister Modi also is seen as a leader and the power vision that he has for the country at large.
Ridhima, also after this landmark deal, what impact will it have on the global front? Like, this is a historic deal. How will the world now see India as?
As I was pointing out, Anjali, this is significant, right? It's not just the aviation sector that is closely watching deals like this, but also on the global map. As I said, if you go back about 40 to 50 years, a deal like this was unimaginable. And that is why yesterday was seen as a landmark day. It was seen as one of the biggest deals in aviation history. We don't remember the last time we spoke about a bulk order of over 450 aircrafts. And once again, going back at the cost of sounding repetitive, even if you heard that video conferencing and we put out those sound bites as well, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, said exactly this. He called Narendra Modi his friend Narendra. It spoke significantly about the friendship between both the countries and where the ties between both the countries stand. Similarly, what we heard from US President Joe Biden as well, the push continues to come because of the ties and the relations that India enjoys with all these countries separately. So as we said, going forward, of course, this will be a big job creating factor. This will help both countries economically as well. And on the larger space, this will help as far as the revival of Air India is concerned, right, which, as you would remember and as our viewers would remember, ever since it's come under the wings of the Tata Sons, they've had a new plan, they've had a new vision. And as part of this revival and vision, these deals and the intent of buying these aircrafts is very, very important.
Right, Ridhima. Please stay with us. We have former Air India Executive Director Jitendra Bhargava joining us on this story. Sir, good morning. Sir, how do you see this landmark deal that Air India has done with buying Boeing aircraft?
It's a most welcome decision, because if Air India was disinvested by the government, it was primarily to ensure that Air India survived as a major airline. Now, what Tatas have done is to place a huge order which catapults itself to amongst the mega carriers in the world. You very rightly stated that we have never seen an airline placing an order for 470 aircraft, and the order being hailed by no less than the President of the United States, President of France, and including the Indian Prime Minister, who was present at the ceremony when they announced the Airbus deal of 250 aircraft. Now, what it would do for Air India is that it will allow Air India to expand its network very aggressively. Yeah. Something that Air India failed in recent years, because under government ownership, it was starved of funds. So everybody would welcome it.
Now, India has scripted history in the global aviation sector, with Air India inking a deal to acquire 470 aircraft from Boeing and Airbus. The Tata Group's bid to buy 250 Airbuses is the world's largest aviation deal in history. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the landmark deal, and as part of its historic expansion, Air India will also purchase 220 planes from Boeing. The agreement shows the deepening ties between India and the United States, and it's also going to help boost employment opportunities in both the countries. While making this announcement, US President Joe Biden highlighted that this is Boeing's third biggest sale of all time. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has also expressed his commitment to building strong ties not only in the aerospace sector but also in other avenues.
निकट भविष्य में भारत एविएशन सेक्टर में विश्व का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा मार्केट बनने जा रहा है। कई आकलनों के अनुसार भारत को अगले 15 वर्षों में 2000 से अधिक विमानों की आवश्यकता होगी। आज की ऐतिहासिक घोषणा इस बढ़ती मांग को पूरा करने में सहायक होगी। भारत की मेक इन इंडिया, मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड विजन के तहत एरोस्पेस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में अनेक नए अवसर खुल रहे हैं.
The first one is that Airbus is contributing to the outstanding development of India. And the new 250 aircrafts, which will be delivered to Air India, will be one more step in this direction. There is a deep commitment in France to provide the state-of-the-art, the most efficient technologies available to India, and to be part of your Made in India strategy. French government has put all my energy for the last 6 years to reinvigorate French industry. And beyond aviation, we are building a new ambition in the sectors of nuclear energy, microchips, space, cyber, biotech, to mention a few of them.
CNN News 18's Ridhima Bhatnagar is joining us live on this story to give us more details. Ridhima, can you tell us more about this mega deal?
Right. So as we've been pointing out that this is a historic deal.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's Wednesday. The war in Ukraine is intensifying. There's fresh American intel and more Russian troops and jets. Ukraine wants fighter jets, but the West won't give them. We'll explain why. India wants jets too, the passenger kind, and it's buying them, not one or two, but a whopping 470 planes. It is the biggest aviation deal in history, and it's making history in more ways than one. The leaders of the UK and the US say India is helping create millions of jobs for Brits and Americans. London's gratitude, though, won't go beyond words. It's not like they'll return the Kohinoor, although the new Queen consort will not wear it in her crown. They're selling it as a virtue. We'll tell you what it's about. And in China, a child attacked his father with a meat cleaver. The video has gone viral and triggered a debate about video game addiction. You don't want to miss the story? The headlines first. All's not well with China and Pakistan. First, they turned off the lights, and now the Chinese are shutting down part of their embassy in Pakistan. Temporary move, but it says a lot. Beijing recently advised its citizens to be extremely cautious while in Pakistan. Meanwhile, in Wuhan, a major protest is on over public health insurance reforms, of all things. This is the Chinese city where the pandemic began. In a surprising move, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon resigns. She is the longest-serving First Minister who took office in November 2014. In New Zealand, one calamity after another, a strong earthquake of 6.3 magnitude hits the country just days after Cyclone Gabriel wreaked havoc. And German carrier Lufthansa suffers a major IT outage, forcing it to cancel and delay many flights across airlines. Lufthansa is Europe's biggest airline group.